Observer, and I am going to be reading some scary Reddit stories for you. So I have here several more scary Reddit stories. Anyway, I'm going to be reading this story and tell me what you think. This story is called Just Out of Curiosity, What is Your Wife's Name? And it was posted on the subreddit TheTruthIsHere by user Dangerous Panda 23. Here we go. When I was in the 5th grade, we moved into a house out in the country. It was built in the 70s, and the only people who lived there prior to us was a married couple who never had children. When we bought the house, the man we bought it from had told my mom that while he loved the house, it had become too hard to continue to live there after his wife passed away. She passed away inside the house, in a sitting room off of our kitchen. My mom had discussed with him the upgrades she was planning to do to the house, and he mentioned stopping by in the future to see what she had done. I have a little brother who was 3 at the time, but could talk very well for his age. One night, a few weeks after moving in, my mom woke up in the middle of the night to my brother awake and playing in his room. He loved toy cars and had arranged them in a very specific spiral. And his TV was on with static on the screen. When she asked him what he was doing, he said his friend woke him up to play. While it freaked my mom out, she just figured it was his imagination and made him go back to sleep. Over the next couple of months, this happened several times. One day while eating dinner as a family, my brother was in his high chair and announced to all of us that his friend was sitting in the room watching us eat. I decided to play along and started asking him about his friend. When I asked what her name was, he said Anne. He said that she never got to be a mommy, so she was happy he was there. We thought it was a weird name for an imaginary friend, as none of us knew anyone by that name. Fast forward to a couple of weeks later, and the original homeowner came to see if he could stop by and see what we had done with the place. When he stopped by, he was impressed and told my mom how much his wife would have just loved what she had done with the house. My mom asked him, just out of curiosity, what was your wife's name? He replied, Anne. This next story is called I Have Vivid Memories of an Event That Happened in 2016, but nobody seems to remember. And this was posted to subreddit TheTruthIsHere by Logan JS55. Alright, this is probably my first long post. And first post that I'm really trying to make. I've read the rules of this subreddit, so I know what to follow. Many will doubt this, many will believe, but all I really need is some explanation of what I experienced. To start off, this all happened back on July 27th, 2016. I was 12 at the time of this event happening. Now I'm 17 with very vivid memories from what happened. It was really just an average summer day. Neighbors mowing their lawn, their wives planting flowers in the garden. I'd say the kids would be out, but let's be real. It was 2016 and there were new video games releasing. I myself was playing some Call of Duty, but had to run to the market with my parents. I got my shoes on and ran outside to get in the car. At that point, I noticed that something was off. I looked around and couldn't put my finger on what was so off. It wasn't until my mother came out and mentioned that everything looked more red, like a filter had been set in the world. Now, if you've never seen a solar eclipse, you know that everything gets dull and grayish until you're in the path of the eclipse at the time. This off-coloration of the world was unnatural. It gave me a feeling of something bad coming. As a young kid, I brushed it off as I was excited to go to the market and get those pizza Lunchables. I'll save the boring market trip and cut to where things really take off. It was maybe an hour after we got back from the market that my best friend wanted me to come outside. I got my shoes back on and turned off the PlayStation. I can already see this. I can already see the comments. And I went outside. This time, everything changed. It was more red, but with a hint of purple outside. I remember distinctly that the sun was still its usual bright and blinding color, but the area around it just deep purple color. It surrounded the sun. I assumed that's where the weird coloring was coming from. I couldn't have been maybe 20 minutes later that my parents came out yelling for us to get inside quickly. They had a look of panic and horror. They were watching something on the TV when it was interrupted with a signal broadcast. Kind of like the weather warning alerts, but this was different. It showed the sun, but it was slowly cracking like black cracks just taking over the sun. The warning told everyone to remain inside and to shut and seal all windows and doors. We spent 40 minutes securing all the windows and doors, except the front door. We were waiting for my grandparents to arrive. I rushed outside to help them when I saw the most unexplainable thing. A huge crack in the sky. It was leaking from the sun. It turned the sky a dark purple and dark green color. It all looked like marble in a way. For context, Google dark purple marble background and dark green marble background. It looked like neon colored marble. It shined through the sky, replacing any blue sky left. That crack was making a loud but quiet sound. Loud enough to hear it clearly, but quiet enough that it doesn't hurt your ears in any way. Watching all this happen before my eyes was startling, but it was kind of beautiful in a way. The sky was unlike you will ever see. I must have been staring for maybe 15 minutes because at the moment, a blinding light took over my eyes and forced me to shield myself. After it was done, there was a huge blue sky, like being standing in a distance. It was so massive, it must have been far away because you could see it all across the United States. It had glowing white and purple like tendrils flailing around. They cracked like whips in the sky, making small cracks like the sun had before. My whole family and I were just staring at this thing, not only terrified, but intrigued by it. It lifted both arms and opened its eyes. Those eyes were the deepest and most bloodshot red I've ever seen. It looked to the sky and reached up with its arms. It opened a huge hole in the sky. Massive chunks of purple rocks came down, creating this massive tower. It flowed with a green color, but was mostly purple. The tower started pulsing like it was alive. It started slow, like a heartbeat with a very low heart rate. Over time it got faster and faster until it just stopped. It cracked and then broke with a blinding light. And then nothing. I was on the porch. My parents asking me why I was staring at the sky. They said I was standing there staring for about 20 minutes, motionless and silent. I asked them about what I just saw, and they looked at me like I was crazy, like I was insane. I spent the next few days inside, unable to sleep. Nobody seemed to remember that, not even the neighbors who were watching it happen too. It was as if it never happened. Only problem is, I have vivid memories of it. I don't understand how there was no way I was dreaming, because nothing changed. Nothing was different. I know lucid dreaming is a possibility, but there are still rules to that. I probably sound crazy to you all, but I remember this like it happened yesterday. It's burned into my mind. I don't know if I was the only one to retain memory of that event, but I know it happened. There's no other way I could have had these vivid memories of it. There would be many mistakes with grammar and spelling. I am on mobile typing this, and I'm not very good at English words. I've always struggled with it, even though it's my only language. Let me know if you want any extra details. I'll try my best to give them to you. And to anyone who reads this, if you ever experience the same thing I have, let the world know. Try and get someone to remember it. I'd love to know at some point what it was. Wow, that was odd to say the least. This next story is called Everyone Has Seen Him Except for Me by BigReddAl. That's BigReddAl, 2 Ds. There is a child entity in my parents' home that my entire family has seen except for me. I haven't lived there full time in many years, but the sighting started years before I moved out. The first time I heard of this boy who supposedly lives in the house was roughly 12 years ago, shortly after moving in. My little brother, 5 or 6 at the time, claimed he saw a dark-skinned boy in the bathroom wearing farm clothes. My brother only told my mom the story. Months later, my sister, 11 at the time, told my mom she saw a boy playing with her toys. What really scared us is that both siblings had the same description of the boy they saw, but neither sibling had spoken to each other about it. Since then, both parents and my other sister, 5 family members in total, claim to have seen and heard him on several occasions. He has never caused any trouble nor acted maliciously. My house has no history. We moved in when the house was freshly built. I don't know if I believe there's a spirit in that house, but I know that my family truly believes it, and they aren't pulling a prank on me. If this boy was there, why do you think he never appeared to me? Alternatively, do you think this is some form of shared false memories between my family? Wow. I don't know, BigReddAl. That's interesting. Number 4. One of my encounters on the Queen Mary, the Murderer, by RicottaPuffs. By RicottaPuffs. I am a medium. I see and hear ghosts. It has happened all of my life. Several months ago, a reader asked me to tell about some of my experiences on the Queen Mary. I had to think about it for a long time before deciding which encounter to post. Some of the things that happened to me on that ship still bother me. They can't harm me, but they're difficult to write about. I feel a need to protect the souls of little children. This child refused to leave that ship with me, but she did tell me what happened to her. I saw so much that day, it's not easy to share. So I thought about it. I thought about this voiceless child whose disappearance was hushed up. My ex-husband and I went on a self-guided tour of the Queen Mary. After that, we joined our guided tour. We were in the back deck near the nursery when we had been told that there was supposedly the ghost of a man in that area who had been fighting for custody of his daughter and who lost that custody. There was indeed some residual despair near the door. It came from the father in that custody incident. But he was not the spirit that concerned me. Near the nursery door, I could feel the spirit of an angry, hateful man. Inside the nursery, I could feel the little girl's spirit. She was afraid to come out. She was safe in there for reasons I do not know. She could not get out, get into the nursery. I tried to isolate and surround him with blindness and a sense of being trapped in an energy field. I then reached out to her and asked her if she needed to get away from him. She walked with us through the ship, but stayed back and disappeared when we left to go to the boiler and engine rooms below decks. She was confused about her death and was waiting for her mother. She did not believe when I told her I could help her. She vanished when we descended the stairs. She was alternatively talkative and fearful, looking behind her as we walked. All right. I understand that she was not trusting. She showed me that she was a child of a woman employed on the ship. Her mother working during the day in housekeeping, so she could often see her mother during the work shift. She liked to go to the nursery, but was encouraged to remain in her quarters and to leave the passengers' children alone. She did not always do as she was told. She was lonely, after all. She was well-liked, but her mother may have been encouraged to tell her to stay out of the way. This curious and friendly child spoke to passengers and played with their children, whenever invited to do so. There were times that the families included her in their lunch parties or talked to her, amused by her open and encouraging personality. She was indulged by crew members. She made the mistake of speaking with a man who found her friendliness offensive. That one passenger was not amused. He was a very religious and twisted man. He saw her precociousness as evidence of a poor child rearing. He thought she was not good, a nuisance, a bad child. This man had killed other people. He felt secretly enraged at her behavior. He thought he was in a good place with God. He saw himself as an avenging angel. He was seriously disturbed. One night, feigning interest, he waited for her outside the nursery. He offered her candy and he lured her into an empty stateroom with promises of a surprise. There, he strangled her. He thought he had eliminated a naughty child. He was sick and terrible to watch. He waited until late at night, and he carried her lifeless body to the top deck of the ship. There, off the coast of a European country, he dropped her overboard. She showed me that the crew members searched for her for hours, trying to calm her mother when she came up missing, trying to look without alarming any of the passengers. I do not know if there is a written evidence of her disappearance. I did feel so much sadness and compassion for her. I wonder if she is still hiding in the nursery. Of course, she is still waiting for her mother. On another occasion, I spoke to a child who was murdered by her own father on that ship. But that child's father was disciplined by the company. That one was less sad and more scary and disturbing. You really gotta watch your kids. I would be afraid for my children. Number 5, Creepiest Army Experience as of yet by ImScaredMommy. That's the OP's username. ImScaredMommy. This happened to me about a year ago in the Army, so it's more or less still pretty fresh in my mind. It's not overly scary, but it did creep me out for a month or two. For the most part, a lot of this could be explained as tricks of an overstressed brain being in a jungle and all. Although 7 people seeing the same thing doesn't strike me as stress. On the very first night, my section mate, who's Malay, woke up to something pulling on his shirt and telling him slowly, "Don't disturb me again." Repeatedly. This happened throughout the night and creeped me out like... Also, due to the fact that every hour or so, he would wake me up asking if I heard it too. The following night, another of my section mates from Papua New Guinea, he's an immigrant, was the sentry for my section. He spotted a black figure making its way towards where we slept, and immediately assumed it to be one of our commanders sneaking up on us to make sure we had a guard awake. My mate loudly requested identification and actually screamed when it jumped down the trees that grew right above us. We all woke up to see it practically Tarzan its way up the hill. Later, when we were tasked to dig shell scrapes, we were assigned the same spot on the hill. 10 minutes into digging, we found that right under where we slept, there was a huge slab of red rock that was considerably smoother than the earth around it. It turned out to be a tombstone of sorts, about a century back when natives still managed the land, the island. We actually sort of got lost in a century-old cemetery that was in the jungle as well, but I guess I'll leave that for a different post. Wow. Oh, here's one. Encounter with Strange Children While Driving Through the Woods by TheAbLord. TheAbLord. Apparently in our society, children can be creepy. This is a true encounter and one of the creepier experiences I've had. And trust me, I've had lots. I stumbled across this sub recently, so I thought I'd share my story here to see if anyone has had similar experiences. Anywhere in the U.S. back in the summer of 2017, my girlfriend and I were driving up from Evanston, Illinois, to spend the weekend at her parents' lakefront cottage in Petoskey, Michigan. A similar destination for summer retreats. This drive for us was around 6 hours long and involves taking the highway north through the western half of Michigan. A lot of this path goes through some fairly remote areas. Eventually we found we had been driving on the same single-lane highway road through some dense woods for what seemed like the last 45 minutes. I recall our navigation showing that we were somewhere in the Huron Manistee National Forest. Also, when I say dense, I mean that the tree canopy all formed almost a tunnel around a fairly narrow road, which made it seem significantly darker than it actually was outside. Luckily, summer days in Michigan are long. We had a couple of hours of daylight left. While driving, I noticed some older, dilapidated constructions in the woods to the right. It looked like remains of old sheds or storage buildings. This is a good time to mention that I'm a bit of a treasure hunter. I collect historical relics and old coins. And these ruins seem like a great place to dig up some artifacts that may have been buried for years. Also, this stretch of road was deserted, so it was unlikely others had explored this place first. Luckily, I had my metal detector with me in the car, as I had planned to use it on the beach on Petoskey. I also had one of those children's shovels made of neon plastic and a wooden handle for digging in the sand, and although it's not ideal for soil, it would do. I told my girlfriend I wanted to stop for a bit and pulled over on the shoulder, and she said okay, but she would stay back and continue napping. The nearest ruins were small, but not too far from the road itself. I figured the current highway must have originally been a backwoods road that the inhabitants could have used back in the day. However, I noticed a larger structure deeper in the woods and decided to check it out, as larger buildings that could have been people's homes and such have a higher chance of yielding a coal find. I made my way over and could see it was made of brick. The window holes were still clearly defined, with dirty broken glass around the edges. I looked through one and could see the building through half collapse. Had a floor that looked somewhat intact. Back towards the road, my car was just barely within range of my vision. Since it was dark around the ruins, I recall leaving my shovel outside, as I didn't need it for the hard floor, and used my free hand to hold my phone as a flashlight to help spot anything shiny. I snooped around the corner and started sweeping with the metal detector. Within the building walls, the roof was collapsed. For half an hour or so, when I started to hear movement around me, like crunching twigs and bushes rustling. I dismissed these as small animals at first, but I kept hearing it, almost as if it was following my movement around the building from the bushes on its perimeter. At this point, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I got the feeling I was being watched, like some animal was stalking me. I decided to turn back. I started hollering and making loud noises in hopes of scaring whatever could be there, and cautiously made my way over to where I had left my shovel. It was gone, and I am certain I couldn't have misplaced it because it was neon orange and I had left it in the middle of a pretty open area. So there's no way I could have just not seen it. At this point, I was spooked enough to just say forget it and booked it back to my car. Smart man. Hopping back in the driver's seat, I could see my girlfriend was awake and her eyes were wide. She told me just a few minutes ago while I was gone, she saw a child emerge from the forest and just look at her from several feet down the edge of the road. She described it as a boy, maybe 7 or 8, with a dirty face and ragged clothes. She told me she was worried the boy was lost or left behind, but the way he looked at her made her uneasy. Said he didn't look afraid or curious, but just looked at her with a gaze that seemed off for a lost child. She told me she still wanted to notify police, but wasn't comfortable leaving her car or calling out to the kid, who by now had disappeared. I hadn't yet told her about my experience by the ruins, but by this point my heart was beating and I just felt very uneasy about this whole thing. As I looked up the non-emergency number for the nearest sheriff's office on my phone, my girlfriend screamed my name. I looked up and there was a boy similar to the one she described, looking directly at us from the edge of the woods, a few feet from the passenger door. I was alarmed to see another, a similar boy right outside the back window peering into the back seat. At this point, I didn't care anymore. I just turned the car on and accelerated out of there. After a few seconds of driving, I looked in the rearview mirror and the boys disappeared into the forest as fast as they had come. I sped over the limit for who knows how long until we were clear out of those woods. We ended up calling the sheriff's office, who mentioned there have been similar sightings of children along that road by other drivers. Though I never got a good look, I agreed with my girlfriend that something was off about those kids, and that their behavior didn't match that of lost children. Maybe they lived on their boy's secluded property and their parents were just playing in the woods or trying to steal our stuff. I had also heard of feral children, which could explain the dirty faces and the raggedy clothes. Later at the college, I googled similar paranormal experiences and sightings. Apparently, melonheads, a band of feral children with enlarged heads, have been spotted in the forests of Michigan, just a couple hours away from where we had been. They could have been black-eyed kids. Upon asking my girlfriend this, she said was sure that the boy staring at her didn't have black eyes, or she would have noticed. However, his mannerisms, as she described them, seemed very similar to the stories I've read about BEK. So it is a possibility. If anyone has insight into this or similar experiences, I'd love to hear them. The experiences creeps me out to this day, and we ended up taking a different route on the way back from Petrovsky just to avoid driving through that forest again. Haha. Too long didn't read. Girlfriend and I stopped on a secluded road at a road trip. I explored some nearby ruins in the forest and come back to the car to realize we were being watched by strange children in the woods. Oh my goodness. That makes me want to stop reading right there. But as you can see, I got a but the Lord to read. Isn't that just creepy? You're in the middle of nowhere and a bunch of kids just pop up out of the woods and they're just staring at you. That's creepy. Wow. Anyway, what do we we have? I'm trying to debate if I should continue. Let me see what time it is. It's just 10:45 p.m. Wow, that's not that late at all. Guess I'll continue. Let me see, 7. Okay, this will be the last one. Number 7, lucky number 7. My personal encounter with black-eyed children by Kane1212. I had never heard of the black-eyed children until I encountered them. Still, not knowing who or what they were, I did what my modern 25-year-old male would do. I Googled them. And boy, was I shocked that I wasn't the only one. Had I not seen them for myself, I would have just thought it was another modern urban legend gone viral. Besides, my girlfriend, I've only told my brother, who was into everything creepy and horror, for I knew he would be the only one who would not judge me or try and commit me to a mental hospital. He's the one who said I should post it here. If this is the wrong sub, then please direct me to the right one. Keep in mind, I'm not a writer. I'm an accountant. I don't want upvotes or to try to impress anybody with a good read. I'm simply trying to warn people that some things out of this world are beyond our comprehension, and if you hear a knock at the door, make sure you check before opening it. I wish I had. Here's my story. My girlfriend and I live in a small gated community in southwestern West Virginia called Glade Springs. The community is about 150 houses, a country club, and a steakhouse bar called Bunkers. Now everyone can come through the gate during the business hours of Bunkers. But after they close, the front security gate stops all traffic and makes sure you are a resident. And if you're a visitor, they call the house that you're going to verify that you are actually expecting them. Sometimes it's a hassle, but hey, don't have to worry about a robbery. So imagine my surprise when my doorbell chimed at 3 a.m. I was jarred awake and wasn't sure if it wasn't just a dream, considering I had just gone to bed shortly before and was probably going into REM sleep. I rolled over and looked at the clock, noticing the time, and when my doorbell chimed again, I felt a cold chill run through my body. Not reading too much into that. It could be one of my neighbors has an emergency, right? I nonchalantly made my way to the door. Now I see how foolish I really was, and I opened it. Luckily, the wrought iron storm door was still locked because who or what stood before me was not a resident of the community. 2 young boys stood at my doorstep, one looking around 17 and another looking about 10, wearing dark hooded sweatshirts and jeans. The young one had shaggy, dirty blonde hair and would only look down at the stone steps, and the other one had his hood pulled and his head tipped to where I could only see from half his nose down. A voice caught my throat, and before I could even ask what they wanted, the older one spoke. His voice sounded forced and dry. There was no emotion or sincerity of what he said. I'm sorry to bother you and your girlfriend, but we need to come in and use your phone. We've been in an accident. I felt a familiar chill return to my whole body. How did he know my girlfriend was here? I wrote it off as my Tahoe and her Volkswagen. Her VW was in the driveway. And I figured they just assumed. I tripped over my words. Something about these kids wasn't right. Wasn't normal. Wasn't human. I can bring you my cell phone and you can call. I don't get service inside here, so you have to stand on the sidewalk to call. I finally said nervously. Of course, I was lying through my clenched teeth. I did not want these kids in my house. When my brother really needs to use your bathroom, Kane, we have to come in, the older one said. And that's when I went into complete panic. He knew my name. I'm sorry, are you from here? How did you know my name? The words practically shook out of my mouth. That's when he became slightly hostile and demanded to be let inside. And I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't help him. And just as I was about to close the main doors when it happened, the both of them snapped their heads upwards and looked me straight in the eye. Black, no iris, no pupil, no retina, just pure deep black. I was paralyzed with fear. For a second I thought those kids were just playing a really cruel joke and had stuck into the community somehow and had brought some of those freaky supernatural demons, Solera contacts. That was until I heard a ringing. It was like the ringing sound you hear when you have a hearing test done, that digital high-pitched shrill ringing. And then the flashbacks started. I was suddenly a toddler again at my grandparents' house, sitting under the chestnut tree with my mother picking up the nuts and putting them in a large metal scoop kettle. It was a crisp fall day. It's one of my earliest and dearest memories. I was about 3 and even have a picture, and one I hold very near to my heart. But then they were there behind my mother. We locked eyes until their eyes, still black as night, and suddenly they smiled simultaneously. That's when everything went black. The next thing I know, I was shaken awake, lying in the mud room floor. My girlfriend standing over me with a worried look. "What in the world, King?" she asked. I had no idea how to answer her. My head had taken a good whack against the slate floor, and a bit of dried blood was stuck on my hair, but other than that, I was fine physically. I slowly remembered everything that had happened and looked at the door. Daylight. I've never been so happy to see morning in all my life. I told my girlfriend everything that had happened, and I honestly think she thought I had brain damage from hitting the floor, but she insisted she believed me. And when we Googled it and believed, that's when she really started to believe me. I don't know who or what they are or where they come from, but they're not of this world. I know for a fact that someone, for some reason, I had a lingering thought. I'm still not sure they put the thought in my head or not, that they wanted me to know that even in my memories aren't safe. They are very strong and seem to be growing in numbers. For some reason they didn't, for some reason they seem to not be able to hurt you physically unless you invite them in, which I don't know, since either no one has ever let them in, or the ones that have aren't around to tell the story anymore. But they get into your mind, but they can get your mind. Since that night, I feel as though I am being watched. I see them at the corner of my eye occasionally. I look at my girlfriend while we're at the house, at the movies, or dinner, and her eyes and her eyes will be solid black for a split second. And worst of all, they took one of my most precious and most often reminiscent memories and turned it into something sinister, something that's now a constant reminder of the black-eyed children. Wow. I'm gonna make that my last story. My name is Smilin Observer, and I am signing out.